What made an emperor erase a boy's soul? Nero didn't just kill Sporus, he performed the most complete identity assassination in recorded history. When the Roman emperor's beloved wife Poppaea died, Nero discovered something that would terrify modern psychologists. You can completely erase someone's sense of self and replace it with whatever you want them to become. What Nero created wasn't just torture, it was a human identity erasure assembly line that systematically deleted everything that made Sporus who he was, then rebuilt him as a living memorial to a dead woman. The techniques Nero used are still operating today in every system designed to control how you see yourself, and here's what will shatter your understanding of your own identity. Nero proved that the human sense of self is far more fragile than we want to believe. Modern neuroscience confirms what he discovered through brutal experimentation. Identity is just a collection of memories, habits, and social reinforcements that can be systematically dismantled and reconstructed. Nero's genius wasn't physical violence, it was recognizing that identity destruction is infinitely more powerful than bodily harm. A broken bone heals, but a broken sense of self becomes a permanent wound that never stops bleeding. Sporus didn't just lose his body, he lost his ability to know who he was supposed to be. But here's the most disturbing part. Nero's identity erasure factory didn't require advanced technology or psychiatric drugs. He used techniques so simple that anyone with enough power and patience could replicate them. The same psychological mechanisms he exploited are being weaponized against millions of people today. Modern psychology has a name for Nero's technique: systematic identity replacement through total environment control. Dr. Robert J. Lifton's research on thought reform shows that human identity depends entirely on external validation and social context. Nero had accidentally discovered how to perform psychological surgery on the human soul. Here's how his identity erasure assembly line worked. First, he isolated Sporus from anyone who knew his original identity. Then he created artificial scarcity, making Nero's approval the only source of validation available. Next came systematic replacement, introducing new memories, new behaviors, and new purposes that slowly overwrote the original person. The final stage was what psychologists call trauma bonding. Sporus became psychologically dependent on Nero for his very sense of reality. The emperor had successfully deleted a human being and installed a completely different person in the same body. Rome, 65 AD. Nero's identity erasure facility wasn't a dungeon, it was a luxurious villa where Sporus was treated like royalty while being systematically destroyed. The emperor understood that comfort makes people more susceptible to psychological manipulation than fear. Nero began by surrounding Sporus with people who had been instructed to treat him as if he were Poppaea. Servants, guards, and courtiers all participated in the collective fiction that Sporus was the emperor's beloved wife, not a captured boy. This constant reinforcement from multiple sources created a psychological environment where reality itself became negotiable. The physical transformation was just the visible part of a much deeper psychological process. While surgeons modified Sporus's body to resemble Poppaea's, Nero was simultaneously reconstructing his victim's mind. Sporus was taught to walk, speak, and gesture like the dead empress, but more insidiously, he was taught to want what she had wanted and fear what she had feared. Contemporary historians describe Sporus developing mannerisms and preferences that belonged to Poppaea, as if her personality was slowly possessing his body. Nero had created a human being who genuinely believed he was someone else, not through delusion, but through systematic psychological replacement. The most chilling detail was that Sporus eventually thanked Nero for helping him remember who he really was. The identity erasure assembly line had been so effective that the victim became grateful for his own destruction. Every technique Nero used to erase human identity operates in modern systems of psychological control, but refined through digital technology and mass media to reshape millions of identities simultaneously. From social media algorithms to corporate rebranding, Nero's identity erasure factory is running 24/7 on a global scale. Social media platforms use Nero's total environment control technique by creating algorithmic bubbles that flood users with consistent messages about who they should become. The constant stream of influencer content, lifestyle messaging, and targeted advertising systematically replaces authentic self-knowledge with manufactured desires and artificial identities. Corporate environments replicate Nero's isolation technique by creating workplace cultures where professional identity becomes more important than personal identity. Employees are rewarded for adopting company values, company language, and company thinking patterns until their original personality becomes irrelevant to their daily existence. Educational institutions often accidentally use identity erasure techniques by teaching students that their natural instincts, family values, and cultural backgrounds are obstacles to success that must be overcome through institutional reprogramming. Students learn to perform approved identities while suppressing their authentic selves. Therapeutic systems sometimes employ Nero's replacement technique by convincing clients that their existing personality structures are dysfunctional and need to be rebuilt. According to psychological theories, the goal becomes creating a healthier version of the person rather than helping them understand and accept who they actually are. Instead of literal physical transformation, modern identity erasers use social pressure, economic incentives, and psychological manipulation to make people voluntarily abandon their authentic selves in favor of more marketable or acceptable identities. The goal is the same: delete the original person and install a replacement. Nero died believing he had successfully resurrected his beloved wife through Sporus. His victim died never knowing if the person he became was real or artificial. But understanding Nero's identity erasure factory gives you something Sporus never had: the ability to recognize when someone is trying to delete who you are and replace you with who they want you to become. The first warning sign is systematic isolation from people who knew your original identity. Anyone who separates you from friends, family, or communities that validated your authentic self is using Nero's playbook. The goal is to make their approval the only source of identity validation available to you. Watch for the better version of yourself manipulation, being told that your natural personality, instincts, or values are holding you back from becoming who you're meant to be. Nero told Sporus he was helping him become his true self. Modern manipulators use the same language about personal growth and self-improvement. The hardest part of resisting identity erasure is recognizing that your sense of self is more vulnerable than you think. Nero didn't target weak-minded people. He successfully erased the identity of someone who had a clear sense of who they were before the process began. Psychological strength doesn't protect you from systematic identity manipulation. Nero's victims were completely dependent on him for their sense of reality. Modern resistance requires maintaining relationships with people who knew and valued your original identity, even when others are pressuring you to evolve or upgrade yourself. Most importantly, remember that your authentic identity is worth preserving, even if it's inconvenient, unmarketable, or unfashionable. The pressure to become someone else is always external. It never comes from your genuine self. Nero erased Sporus so completely that historians still debate whether the boy ever really existed or was just a creation of the emperor's imagination. His identity erasure factory is still operating today in every system that teaches you to doubt your own authenticity and depend on external approval for your sense of self. Robert Greene warns about those who manipulate through psychological dependency, but Nero's story reveals something more fundamental. The most dangerous manipulation targets your ability to know who you actually are. Your identity belongs to you, not to anyone who promises to help you become better. In the comments, share a time when you recognize someone was trying to erase your authentic identity and replace it with their preferred version of you. What made you realize they valued their vision of who you should be more than who you actually were? Your awareness could help someone else protect their psychological independence. Hit subscribe because we're exposing how history's most effective identity destruction techniques are being used to control your sense of self today. Every story reveals another way people are taught to doubt their own authenticity, and every understanding gives you more power to remain who you actually are. Nero's victims died not knowing if they were real people or artificial creations. You don't have to make the same mistake. Your authentic self is sacred. Don't let anyone convince you it needs to be deleted and replaced. The physical transformation was just the beginning. The real horror was teaching someone to forget they had ever been anyone else. Make sure no one ever convinces you that your authentic identity is something to be ashamed of or overcome.